I'm John Dennis. I'm running against Nancy Pelosi.
We have the most beautiful state and one of the most beautiful places in the world, and people are leaving.
I'm gonna catch you when all the cameras aren't around, and I'm gonna you up. I'll try it.
He's the chairman of the San Francisco GOP, and he's running against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Step back, everyone.
Well, welcome to the John Dennis Report. Thanks for being here today. It's Thursday, May 13th, 2021, as they like to say on the War Room Pandemic, the year of our Lord, Anno Domini. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it today. Going to have a little bit of fun. Had some interesting things happen over the last couple of hours and today, and going to give an update on the Pelosi campaign. So really appreciate you being here. Yeah, some of you may know too that I'm also on the board of a company, of a political organization, national political organization known as the Republican Liberty Caucus. I am the vice chairman, and we've got a good-sized membership from around the country, really strong in Florida, and we have conventions every other year. Last convention was here in California in Redondo Beach, and we are actually going back to Orlando at the end of next month for the convention in Orlando. I think it's June 25th through the 27th. If you're in the area, go to rlc.org and check out when you can get tickets. There are going to be some interesting people there. I was talking to Thomas Massie the other day, the great Republican congressman from Kentucky, and Thomas is committed to being our featured speaker on Saturday night. We have some other interesting folks who may be available as well. We already have some other people scheduled. The newly elected Congressman Byron Donalds, who's from Florida, is going to be there. So if you're going to be in and around Orlando, or if this is a group with which you find some interest, please join us on from June 25th through the 27th in Florida. I'm looking forward to going down. I'm going to look at some real estate down there, investment real estate, and I'm also going to play a little golf and try and have a good time. But just so you know, the Republican Liberty Caucus is growing the liberty wing of the Republican Party, sort of the libertarian wing of the Republican Party. Spaces populated by the likes today of Rand Paul, his dad Ron Paul, Barry Goldwater. So that's the group that we are, what we try to represent, the liberty side of the Republican Party. If you find that to be interesting, you should join us at rlc.org. Anyway, so that's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to take my daughter down, and we're going to spend some time in Florida, in maskless Florida, and wide open Florida. Apparently, we're going to do some fun stuff. Orlando is an interesting place, and a place where you can definitely have a good time. I had an interview, so let's get right into it. I had an interview earlier today with Politico. Now, I've done interviews with Politico before, and I have to say the last journalist I talked to there, a guy by the name of, I think his name is Dave Siders, was pretty fair, as I recall. Pretty fair. And the job of journalists, what they do is they make a living getting people to say stuff that they don't want to say. At least when they're doing the interview portion of it. And as a result, they're really, kind of artists of deception, most of them. So I was reluctant to do the interview. Although I guess I recall, like I said, the Dave Siders guy was pretty fair to me, and Politico's definitely left-leaning. I mean, there's no question about that. But, they do need, from time to time, to have the other side. So they have an incentive to deliver a fair representation of your interview. And the discussion was about Caitlyn Jenner. And I know that Politico generally is not my friend, and we discussed Caitlin, and for those of you who know, my thoughts about that. I mean, I thought when you do a T chart, pros and cons, right? And you say, okay, well, what are the good things about this candidate? What does he or she bring to the table? What are their downsides? And so in previous tweets, I talked about all the upside because Caitlin has some substantial assets as a political candidate to bring to the table. Huge name recognition, huge social media following, an ability to raise money, has her own money, a history of knowing how to win things, having success in multiple platforms. In her case, the decathlon, and as a media figure, for so many years. So she had some upside, and I thought the key thing was going to be her first interview. And so I was watching. I was looking forward to it, and that's where we took off the conversation with Politico. I explained what my thoughts were about her, and then I said I thought she disappointed, and then I thought her second big interview, which was with Dana Bash the other day of CNN, was also an even bigger disappointment, where I think she went off the rails so far. I think it's going to be very difficult for Caitlin to recover. I think where she went wrong was she doesn't really feel like she's got an in-depth understanding of the issues. And two, she's trying too hard to be liked instead of taking the reins and acting as if she's the governor of the state, taking control, wanting to be liked is really her concern. And there was a flip-floppiness, particularly in her Dana Bash interview, when it came down to amnesty. See, one of the things that she said was, now, this is irrespective of whether or not you agree with her position. One of the first things that she said before she had either the Hannity interview, her first interview, was that she thought that trans girls should not be competing in school athletics with biological girls, and she was very firm about it. And when the interviewer, the reporter asked for a second question, she said, "That's it. That's my answer," and just walked away. Okay, look. You may not agree with the position. I do, by the way, but you may not agree. But even if you don't agree with it, you have to agree that that is the way to do it. You gave the answer to the question. You have it. You take whatever judgment you want along with that, with that answer. But that's my answer, and that's it. And then move on to the next thing. And I thought that was a good sign. The Hannity interview, she was a little more wishy-washy. And then by the time she got to Dana Bash, she was actually doing sort of flip-flop. And I got the impression from her answer on amnesty that had Hannity really, I don't think Hannity asked her specifically that question. Maybe he did. But, you didn't get the same answer on Hannity that you got in the interview that she had with Dana Bash. So there's a flip-floppiness. That's really the big issue. And I also got to go back to that other problem that I have, is which she doesn't seem like she really has an in-depth knowledge of the issues. I get the sense that her responses are sort of like the same response that she would give if she was sitting in a group of friends with a glass of wine in her hand and chit-chatting about all the things that are wrong with California. Oh, somebody ought to do something about that. Great. You're running for office. You're the one who is going to do something about that. You need to know the issue. You need to know who's responsible. You need to know how we got into the position that we're in and what your alternative direction is going to be for the state to resolve that problem. Lots of opportunities there. But she missed them. And, so that's that. I think her candidacy is all but over. I mean, I suppose there's a very slim chance she could turn it around, but I don't see that happening at this point. Now, that's what I said. And it's the same stuff that I've said for those of you who follow these live streams and have seen, what I've said here. Now we have to see what they'll publish. I've been consistent. If something seems out of step, we'll soon learn. I don't think so. I think Politico, they might skew it a little bit towards their narrative, but I think they'll more or less give the substance of what I said, especially because I think it's frankly, it's not helpful to to the Republicans. So let's see how that plays out. Okay, fine. Let's move on. Hey, can you pull up that tweet, Mario, the one that I did this afternoon from the Safeway? Yeah. So I mean, I've been talking to people in Florida because I'm making that trip down there. And, Florida's apparently wide open. Nobody wears masks. People just go about their business. Life goes on. Meanwhile, I got to tell you, see, if you don't live in a place like this, you don't know. But in San Francisco, there is like 100% mask. I don't even want to say compliance anymore. There's just 100% of the people are wearing masks. And it's actually gone down a little bit in the last week. I've seen a few people who are like me. Like I said a while ago, I'm not wearing masks anymore. I'll honor stores that want me to wear them and establishments because I don't want to get them in trouble. But I'm not walking around the streets anymore. The CDC, the day after I said that, coincidentally, I'm sure, said, you're okay walking around outside without wearing a mask. I don't give a damn what they say anyway. But that's what I said. And so today, the CDC actually said that if you've been vaccinated, and I have been, reluctantly, but vaccinated nonetheless, that, you don't have to wear masks anywhere. So I had to run into Safeway. I had to pick a couple of things up from my office. And so ran in. And this particular Safeway in San Francisco that I went into, first of all, again, keep in mind, there is 100% of the people basically wearing masks, especially indoors. 100% of the people wearing masks. And so I said, let me try something. So I actually have a little video of it before I went in. This is the picture. What Mario is putting up is the picture of me leaving the store. But I have seen the security guards at Safeway, at this specific Safeway, run people out of the store for not wearing masks. Run them out or force them, yelling at them, big confrontation. You're not wearing a mask. I saw them do that. So this time I just said, to hell with it. I'm not wearing one. So I just walked in, and there was a security guard there, and he got maybe distracted by something else, or maybe he saw me and didn't want to take on the discussion, just walked right by me. And then I walked around for a bunch of minutes. I had to find some stuff. It took me a while. I wasn't there a very long time, but I was all through the store. Not one person said a thing to me. And, I did have my mask in the back of my pocket because I did want to buy my stuff and get on with it. But nobody said anything. I checked out. Nobody said a word to me. And then I took this picture afterwards and posted it on Twitter, which is getting bunch of responses. Let me see where we're at here now. Yeah, a lot of people responding to it and liking that. This, as I said, it's the first time in over a year. First time since the end of March of 2020 that I went into a supermarket without a mask on. So anyway, so that was interesting. Again, I also find it interesting that nobody said anything to me, and I can't quite figure out why. Was it because this Safeway's on Market Street in San Francisco? It's you get some rough and tumble people in there, but all kinds of people going through. But certainly your fair share of potential, street folks or folks who could start create issues. And maybe because I wasn't dressed like that, and I just was minding my own business. But again, nobody said a word. So I'm hoping that this is the way things are going to be moving forward. That we're not going to we're going to see more and more people just saying to hell with it. I'm not wearing anything, and wearing any masks, and just going forward. I think if they do, by the way, it's a sign that people are even more and more fed up with Gavin Newsom and the whole regime, all of them, the whole regime, from Washington, D.C., from Pelosi, down to Newsom, down to Breed, Mayor Breed here. Speaking of Pelosi, let's move on to the next topic, which is Pelosi, my campaign against Nancy Pelosi, and the update. And so right now we are a little more than a year away from the primary. And at this stage of the game, we have our website up. We've got our social media up and running. We're doing messaging, through those outlets. This program is going to become more about discussing the campaign and discussing Nancy Pelosi and the policies. She's great opponent in that respect, in that she does, as I've said before, something dopey every few days or so. She can't go more than 10 days without getting in the news with something outrageous. So we are going to be addressing all those issues on the show. The show is going to be a big component of the campaign ultimately, just because it's a great way to get leverage, to get the message out. And, we don't have as many opportunities to speak in front of groups in San Francisco as we might, just because most of the groups that we'll see are Democrats, and the Democrats won't see Republicans. So you have to kind of make your own events. You have to go to sort of neutral groups, business associations, that sort of thing, and make your pitch there. There's some neutral political groups, but we are going to create a lot of media out of things like this live stream, and then also just raising money. So that's the key thing right now, is that I've done this before. I've run campaigns. I've run my own campaigns. So fortunately, I have the knowledge and understanding of how to actually raise money. So right now we've got all of our platforms set up to raise money, and we're going to take all the money that we raise and post it into enormous media buys in San Francisco in a variety of ways. Don't want to give away all of our strategies, who we're going to target, the messaging that we're going to come up with. But I will say that sort of a reluctant candidate, but in another time that I did it, but this time I'm anxious to do it. I'm getting an early start. We are way ahead of the curve at this point, and fundraising is going pretty well. It's not to say that we couldn't use more help. Always could use some more help, and we would appreciate it if you donated John Dennis for Congress. But every nickel is going to go into convincing San Francisco voters that Nancy Pelosi has got to go. Which we are seeing right now, the combination of, the wokeristas, driving the agenda and dragging Pelosi along with them, and then she and Biden and Harris and other people in the administration taking us in a direction that could put the finishing touches on this country. And I hate to speak in those kinds of terms, but think about what we're witnessing right now. And we're barely a little more than 100 days into the Biden administration. We've got a disaster on our hands. What do you think it's going to be like 6 months from now? You think it's going to get better, or it's going to get worse? And here's another question. Is Nancy Pelosi going to make it better, or is she going to make it worse? Is she really in a position, and has she ever shown in any of her time as a leader and in leadership positions in the U.S. government, in the federal government, that she can make anything better? Anything? Or is everything she touched turned to muck? So this is our opportunity. It's really, she seems to have a grip on Washington, D.C. It's really up to us to finish Nancy Pelosi here in San Francisco. We have to do it. People are turning. Gavin Newsom is from here, and people are turning from him. The city turned over a lot of signatures to recall Gavin Newsom. And I think the city is fed up with the leadership from the Democratic Party. Nancy Pelosi, by far, she is the number one person in the Democrat Party here in San Francisco. They're sick of the depressing sight of homeless people shooting up in front of them, using our sidewalks as toilets. They are furious over the loss of law and order in this town. Chain drugstores, CVS, Walgreens, closing around the city because a law was passed by Democrats which allows people to steal up to $950 and only be charged with a misdemeanor. And when that happens, the stores basically don't even bother doing anything. They don't bother calling the police. If they did, the police wouldn't bother showing up. So what happens is criminals are walking into San Francisco stores, not just Walgreens and CVS, but largely them and other stores as well, with calculators. And they add up everything that's in their cart, and as long as it's under $950, they just walk out the door. Now, stores are used to dealing with a certain amount of loss. They factor it in. But you can't continue to sustain these kinds of losses every day, day in, day out, before, you have to say, listen, we're not profitable here. We have to shut down. That kind of lawlessness is also, making its way into normally really safe neighborhoods. I can tell you lots of people who I know who live in great neighborhoods in this town who've had their garages broken into while, their families are asleep in the house. Think about that. I mean, the thieves have been sort of in and out types. They get in, they break a garage door window, they open the garage door, they get in, they take what they can, and they leave. They haven't, most of them, not all of them, but most of them have not led to full-on home invasions. But, when you break into an attached garage, even if you don't go upstairs, that's a home invasion. And think about that. How violated you feel. And what does Nancy Pelosi do? She's, people see her as the savior who brings in all this federal money into San Francisco, but she always brings it in with no strings attached. If the strings are attached, they're maybe attached in terms of, supporting her, but they're not attached in terms of, building a better quality of life for people who live in San Francisco. The strings are attached to ensure her political hold and political position in San Francisco, but nothing else. So we're not getting anything out of it. Nancy Pelosi is contributing in that regard. Then she's subsidizing the failure of San Francisco politicians and San Francisco in general. And so we're going to make that case loudly and clearly, early and often, and that's the key thing. Starting in this year, even though the primary is not until June, we are going to start early and often, starting this year, getting the message out that people need to move into a different direction, or else this town is never going to change. And it would be a shame, that this generation allowed the crown jewel of, as I think, of American cities to be run amok and run into the ground and turned into a hellhole. Would be terribly sad, and it's something I think that the core of San Francisco just won't stand for. I don't think politics in this town reflects the majority of people. I think if you polled this city, that their politics would be largely different than those who are leading it. But the people who are leading it have managed to use the systems that are in place, like our voting system here. We have a different way of counting votes called ranked choice voting. They have used that system, and they have taken it over, and it's benefited the extremes of the Democrat Party. The extremes of the Democrat Party are running the city, and it's not sustainable. And I think the core of San Francisco is in a position where they're ready to reject that. So we'll put our position out there. If you can support the campaign, John Dennis for Congress, that would be great, because every nickel that we get will go towards getting the message out to San Francisco voters. So anyway, that's what we're working on right now. Really largely fundraising and prepping for where the funds are going to be directed and how we're going to actually win the votes to take down Nancy Pelosi. So anyway, that's where we're at right now. I don't know if we have any questions today. Do we have anything there, Mario?
Not today.
Okay, good. All right, guys, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. I look forward to chatting with you again next week, and putting out some other content that you'll find interesting over the course of the next couple of days. Please do subscribe to the John Dennis Report on YouTube, John Dennis Report on YouTube, and on Facebook for that matter. And on Twitter, it's @RealJohnDennis, as it is on Instagram, @RealJohnDennis. John Dennis Report on YouTube. Punch the button there. Make sure you subscribe. Deeply appreciated. Have a great day.